Welcome back to Unveiling the Truth. We're your host, Nefer.
And Nelly, and today we're going to be discussing the role of Pope Pius XII during the Holocaust.
Yep, so without further ado, let's go unveil the truth.
Alright, so before we get started, just like we start off everything that is good and holy, Nefertiti is going to lead us off with a prayer.
Yes. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Pater noster, qui es in celis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua sicut in cielo et in terra. Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie, et dimitte nobis debita nostra, sicut et nos dimittimus debitoribus nostris, et ne nos inducas in tentationem, sed libera nos a malo. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Nefer.
Thank you. Alright, cool. So we're going to be talking about Pope Pius XII and the Holocaust.
Exciting stuff. Exciting stuff.
Yes, so this is very historical stuff, but also kind of showing how like the Catholic Church is always there in time of trouble.
Oh yeah, because there's like this notion going around that the Catholics didn't do anything during the Holocaust, or at least the Catholic Church didn't do anything during the Holocaust, that like they washed their hands clean of it, they stayed out of it. When in actuality, the Catholics are doing a lot more for the Jews than you think, like hiding them, sheltering them, feeding them, offering masses for them, stuff like praying for them, stuff like that. Like, if anybody in their right mind knew that what was going on was wrong.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the reason as to why a lot of the heat is seen against Pope Pius XII, who, by the way, as of 2009 is venerable, is because he was like the main pope during all the times of World War II and everything. But there's actually a lot of history that goes behind a lot of his decisions, and even just the fact that he did help a lot of the Jews. Right. So just to kind of start off, just really quickly with like what he actually did to help the Jews. And so a lot of what he did, I think when it got to a certain point that the Jews in Rome actually asked Pope Pius XII for help. And Pope Pius XII actually hid Jews inside the Vatican and even inside cloistered convents. And so Ignatius Press did a movie on it, and the way they showed it in the movie was that like all the men were dressed up as priests.
Oh, nice.
And all the women were dressed up as nuns. And then there's actually between two of the male characters, the Jewish guy, he's like, my mother would kill me if she saw me wearing this. And then their friend, who's actually Catholic, but he's hiding out with them because he's like a revolutionary. Yeah. He's like, my mother would be really happy if she saw me like this. So they hit them, and I think they had to like hide the kids whenever there were like authorities to come in and search and stuff. And so like they said, they even opened up the cloistered convents, and the nuns were like, cloistered, you're supposed to stay closed up. And they were like, oh, what are you guys doing? And the Pope was like, no, you guys are opening up, like this is an emergency. And Catholic Answers even says that some of them even said that they were actually even being fed like kosher and stuff. So they were still being respected, like their Jewish customs and traditions. Even though they were still within the they were still within the Vatican. They were still being respected for their beliefs and everything.
Oh, that's neat. That's neat.
And so because of everything that Pius XII did, when he died, there were actually so many people who spoke up in favor of him. And so according to Catholic Answers, those who eulogized Pius XII represent a who's who of Jewish leadership, including the State of Israel, the World Jewish Congress, the Anti-Defamation League, the Synagogue Council of America, the Rabbinical Council of America, the American Jewish Congress, the New York Board of Rabbis, the American Jewish Committee, the Central Conference of American Rabbis. And so a lot of these were, when Pius XII passed away, a lot of these Jews came up and spoke out about it.
Oh, wow. And in support of him and everything.
Yeah, and even by the end of World War II, the head rabbi of Jerusalem even converted with his family to Catholicism.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, out of like respect for it. And so we know that Pius XII hid a lot of people in the Vatican and saved a lot of Jewish lives. But there's still this kind of rumor or belief spreading around that he actually made deals with Hitler, and that he knew about it. He knew about the Holocaust and stayed silent and didn't do anything, and that he actually like got the priests to support the Nazis and whatever. And so there are reasons as to why people believe that. And there's also like, for example, about how he stayed silent. He did stay silent at one point, but there was a reason as to why he did it. Okay. And so that's just kind of what we're going to clarify and talk about right now. So a lot of the reasons why people started to believe that Pius XII didn't help out during the Holocaust was because of this play called The Deputy. Okay. And in this play, let me see, I'm going to read this excerpt. If we are to believe modern critiques of Pius XII, which have ranged from Rolf Hockett's criminally silent pontiff in the 1963 play The Deputy to John Cornwell's Hitler's Pope, which is a book that someone wrote saying that the Pope was basically...
I heard of that.
Then not only did the Pope's Jewish defenders get it wrong, but the Nazis and secular journalists did as well. Because the Nazis wrote out against him. Secular journalists were like, oh, he's actually saying something. And a lot of Jews defended and praised him for his actions. And so he's saying, like, if this were really true, these people were all wrong during their time. And so in this play, The Deputy, it's basically showed how, like, Pius XII didn't say anything and didn't do anything. And it was just like, it was complete lies, but people believed it when they saw the play. And it was written by a German.
Oh, wow.
The play was written by a German, and people were like, oh, that must be true. It's like, dude, it was written by a German. Like, when all the Jews are like, hey, Pius XII, he did a lot. And then, this German comes in and is like,
okay.
Yeah, and a lot of what happened can even be traced back to before Pius XII was, before he was Pope. And when his predecessor, Pius XI, was Pope, and Pius XII, what he was the Secretary of Veteran Affairs or something like that. He was basically Pius XI's right-hand man.
Oh, okay.
Well, as Cardinal Pacelli. And so going back to 1933, what happened was that there was a concordat an agreement between the Vatican and the Third Reich because the Vatican was just trying to preserve Catholicism in Germany. They were hoping that Catholicism would be respected and preserved in Germany, and so they were like, okay, let's go through with this. But they didn't realize that, exactly what the Third Reich was planning to do. And once they did find out what the Third Reich was planning to do, even before World War II started, it was in, what year was it? It was in March 14th, 1937. Pius XI released an encyclical written in German, and it's called Mit brennender Sorge. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, sorry. Which basically from German translates to English, with burning concern.
Oh, wow.
And in this encyclical, also written entirely in German, he basically is like he's basically calling out Germany for what they're doing and for their racial pride and for basically trying to put Germany against the church. And so here's an explanation, and in this, Pius XI explains the concordat and stuff. So it's not like the secret thing, like, they had this agreement with the Third Reich. It's like, we did that, but we didn't think that you guys were going to be this crazy. So that's why we did it. But, now we're telling y'all to chill.
Yeah.
And so in Article 3 of this encyclical, Pius XI writes, when in 1933 we consented, venerable brethren, to open negotiations for a concordat, which the Reich government proposed on the basis of a scheme of several years' standing, and when, to your unanimous satisfaction, we concluded the negotiations by a solemn treaty, we were prompted by the desire, as it behooved us, to secure for Germany the freedom of the Church's beneficent mission and the salvation of the souls in her care, as well as by the sincere wish to render the German people a service essential for its peaceful development and prosperity. Hence, despite many and grave misgivings, we then decided not to withhold our consent, for we wished to spare the faithful of Germany, as far as it was humanly possible, the trials and difficulties they would have had to face given the circumstances had the negotiations fallen through. So in that case, it's basically like the lesser of two evils. It was by acts that we wished to make it plain, Christ's interest being our sole object, that the pacific and maternal hand of the Church would be extended to anyone who did not actually refuse it. But then here comes the skating part, the next part. If then the tree of peace which we planted on German soil with the purest intention has not brought forth the fruit which in the interest of your people we had fondly hoped, no one in the world who has eyes to see and ears to hear will be able to lay the blame on the Church and on her head. The experiences of these last years have fixed responsibilities and laid bare intrigues which from the outset only aimed at a war of extermination. In the furrows where we tried to sow the seed of a sincere peace, other men, the enemy of Holy Scripture, oversowed the cockle of distrust, unrest, hatred, defamation, of a determined hostility overt or veiled, fed from many sources and wielding many tools against Christ and his Church. They, and they alone with their accomplices, silent or vociferous, are today responsible should the storm of religious war instead of the rainbow of peace blacken the German skies. And so, I mean, you can tell that he's basically saying, like, Germany, you're not doing what we intended to do.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of the other sources I saw, it was like when the Third Reich started going crazy with things, the Vatican was like, hey, you're not following our agreements. We agreed to peace and you're not following that.
Okay, so they had like a private agreement of like peace or whatever, and the German took advantage of them.
Yeah,
okay.
The Germans took advantage of it, and they, what do you call it? The Germans took advantage of that, and they were even like, oh, well, you know what? Doesn't matter. So they basically just kind of like went back on their own agreements. And
after
they were like,
they got
oh,
what they
that
wanted.
through. Yeah, after they got what they wanted. So
wow.
The thing is that the Vatican sincerely did not know what was going on. And again, this was back in 1933.
Yeah.
This was 6 years before the war even started.
Oh, shoot. Wow.
And the encyclical was released 2 years before the war started.
Okay.
So before 1939 to 1945 was World War II. Before the war even started, they were like, Germany, you're going down the wrong path and y'all have to like...
Wow, so this is before all the big stuff happened.
Yeah.
They already saw it happening.
They already called them out on it and even said, like, yes, we did come to an agreement, but you're not following through with your promise.
Mm-hmm.
And we intended to just create peace for your people and to help, to help Catholics in Germany and to help Germany grow.
So by the time the Holocaust started happening, they had already known that the Germans weren't okay, that they were on their side.
They had already called out the Germans.
Mm-hmm.
And because, like we said, this was written entirely in German, which I don't know if this was like the first time it was ever written in German, because encyclicals are usually written in like Italian or in English or Spanish, or like the original language of the Pope. Pius XII was actually the one who was multilingual. I think he spoke 6 or 7 languages fluently.
Oh.
And German was one of them. So you can assume that he's the one who wrote the encyclical for Pius XI. Yeah, and it even got to the point where because the Germans were like not fulfilling their part of the agreements, Hitler himself even said, let me see, where is it? Let me see, it's actually, this is a full quote here, that though the conflict between Christianity and Nazism seems inevitable now, it did not seem so when Hitler came into power. Catholics and Protestants alike helped this coup d'etat. Martin Niemöller himself supported him. I think he was a Protestant pastor who was incarcerated.
Oh, okay.
Also for speaking out against him. And then it says, and one of Hitler's first acts as chancellor was to declare, in the 2 Christian creeds lie the most important factors for the preservation of the German people. So he was actually saying like, yay, Christianity in the beginning when he started, and that's why they kind of supported him. Mm-hmm. But then it says, and this is from the Time Vault. This is an article from December 23rd, 1940.
Wow.
Then it goes on to say, only in secret did he tell his confidant, Hermann Rausching, the parsons will be made to dig their own graves. They will betray their God to us. They will betray anything for the sake of their miserable little jobs and incomes, ... I can guarantee that they will replace the cross with our swastika.
Holy cow. So they were like purposely trying to attack the Catholics.
Yeah, so they already had this secret plan, but in order to succeed, they knew that they needed the churches in their favor, and so they got both Catholics and Protestants in their favor.
Well, yeah, because the Catholics have always been like that authority amongst the nations, the worlds and stuff like that.
Right, and so when they did do that Concordat in 1933, they didn't think that Hitler was actually like, oh yeah, Christianity and whatever. And so they were like, cool, that's what we want. We want people to have the freedom to come to the church. But once they realized that Hitler's real plan was to oppose Christianity, and how he even said so in secret, he wants them to replace the cross with our swastika, that's when Pius XI, with the help of Pius XII, started speaking out against it in that encyclical in 1937. 1937! So then when Pius XII became Pope, after Pius XI died, he kept speaking out against the, he kept speaking out against the totalitarianism, the Nazi regime and everything. And even another article from the time in 1943, it's talking about Pius XII. We'll post it down below because it's interesting to see these like first-hand articles during this time. But from Time magazine on August 16, 1943, there was a huge issue done on Pius XII, and they were talking about the controversies of his staying silent and whatever. But it did say this: But no matter what critics might say, it is scarcely deniable that the Church Apostolic, the Catholic Church, through the encyclicals and other papal pronouncements, has been fighting against totalitarianism more knowingly, devoutly, and authoritatively, and for a longer time than any other organized power.
Oh, shoot. Wow.
In Time magazine. Remember when back then when, secular news sources used to praise the church? And even Albert Einstein himself was like, the church is the only one speaking out. Albert Einstein himself, who never even cared much for
politics and stuff.
Yeah, Christianity or anything. He says, only the church stood squarely across the path of Hitler's campaign for suppressing truth. I never had any special interest in the church before, but now I feel a great affection and admiration because the church alone has had the courage and persistence to stand for intellectual truth and moral freedom. I am forced thus to confess that what I once despised, I now praise unreservedly. Wow. And that was Thomas Aquinas. Oh my gosh. That was Albert Einstein. I don't know how I confused that. That was Albert Einstein regarding Christianity, Christian church, and the Catholic Church. And that was in the 1940 article.
That's cool.
So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of evidence as to how people were praising Pius XII during this time. And so when people say that Pius XII stayed silent and that he should have done more, a lot of what happened is that while he was cardinal, he was helping Cardinal Pacelli. He was helping Pius XI a lot. And when he became pope, he stayed in that same stance. And there's even belief that Hitler actually tried to assassinate Pius XII.
Oh wow!
That he wanted to assassinate Pius XII because he was so adamantly opposed to him. But there was a point in time in which he did kind of stay silent, but there was a reason for that. So what did happen was that when Pius XII became pope, according to this video by Catholic Truth, in 1940, and this is a quote, in 1940, Joachim von Ribbentrop was sent by Hitler to Pope Pius XII to try to convince him to join their side. He said, "It's absolutely assured that we're going to win this war. We are all basically all powerful. We would like you to join in with us. Don't speak out against us. Please join our side. We can be a great force together." And at this point, Pope Pius XII went down and listed a litany of crimes that Hitler had done in the Nazi ideology, standard for, and he basically just left. So basically what happened was that Hitler, when Pius XII became pope, and I saw this also somewhere, but I don't remember in which article it is. I'll post it down below. But in one of the articles, it did actually say that when Pius XII became pope, the Germany was actually like, we don't support this, and we're not happy that he became pope, because they knew how fiercely he'd spoken out against the Nazi regime. And so they were actually upset when he became pope.
Wow.
And because they knew that Hitler was sent one of his henchmen to try to get Pope Pius on their side. And Pope Pius XII was like, no, you guys are crazy. You've done this and this and this and this and this. How am I going to join you? And they became enemies from that day.
Dang.
And that was when they said that they wanted to invade the Vatican and assassinate the Pope. And so what happened was that in 1943, when the German Roundup started, many people continued to speak against the Catholic Church until Hitler threatened them. And so there was actually lots of other Christian Protestant churches that were also speaking out against. And so it says one Sunday, Calvinists, Lutherans, Catholics, many Orthodox, different religions all received the same sermon, and they distributed them throughout all their churches, and it was a condemnation of the Nazi regime. And all of the churches read it in their churches until Hitler heard about this, and he threatened to actually deport Jews and kill the people who aided and abetted them. And so that included Christians and stuff. And so he says that all the Protestant religions stopped speaking about it, but the Catholics kept speaking about it. And so what happened was that they kept speaking about it, and even though they kept speaking about it, Hitler made true on his promise. And so what happened, I think this was when Holland was taken over. I think it was when Holland was taken over. So because the Nazis and the Nazi regime, the Gestapo, they threatened the Pope and been like, if you Catholics keep saying something, we're going to come and we're going to kill all the Jews and Christians. And they were like, we're going to keep saying. And so they did. But when they saw that they actually invaded Holland, he says he not only killed all of the Catholics, it was about like 3,000 or more Catholics, but they also went to look for Jews that they may be hiding, and they found a lot of Jews and ended up killing them. So they killed a lot of Christians and Jews, and in the Holland Roundup was when St. Edith Stein and Anne Frank were both taken to the concentration camps. And so because of that, that was when Pius XII was like, okay, now we need to approach this from a different angle.
Yeah.
And that's when he started to stay quiet.
Oh, so they stayed quiet to protect the people.
Yeah, because they kept speaking out, but when they saw that all this murder was actually happening, they're like, okay, if we speak out, more people are going to die.
Okay.
So we need to find a way to help them without speaking out and to prevent all these murders.
That makes sense. Yeah, because I knew that it wasn't just Jews that were being targeted, like Catholic priests were being targeted, Christians and stuff like that. So that's probably why Hitler was probably mad at the Pope.
Yeah, exactly. And so they were enemies. They were like pronounced enemies, and he wanted to kill Pope Pius XII. And it's strange because up to this time, you know, secular mainstream media was praising Pope Pius XII and the church for speaking out. Albert Einstein was doing it. A lot of Jews were doing it, prominent Jews, and then there were even some Jews who converted, like the Rabbi of Jerusalem, the head rabbi of Rome at the time. And so there's articles from like the New York Times, even from the archives.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff on this. We'll put them all in the link too.
Yeah, there's a lot of articles, and I can't read through everything, but there's
really old articles.
Yeah, there's like archives from this time, and so it's like, how was it that everyone was praising him during this time? It's like, oh, psych, he was a villain. Like, that doesn't make any sense. There was the one New York Times article. Oh, yeah, it's over here. Well, I can't see it in the actual article, but it's here in the transcript. How the New York Times actually said that... Yeah, so it said that in the New York Times, it said the Catholic Church was a lone voice in the dark. Like, speaking out. Like, they were the only ones speaking out. And so... Yeah, it was definitely a lot, and a lot of people were praising, and it was obvious to everyone that the Catholic Church was still speaking out.
Wow.
Like, whether you had there were some people who were like, oh, Pius XII isn't doing enough, or like, he did this before, but everyone's like, okay, but you can't deny the fact that he's helping a lot of people now.
Yeah, so then how do you think it got started that, like, Pope Pius XII had, like, helped Hitler and was friends with him, like, the Hitler's Pope?
That was kind of when that play was written out, that he like stayed silent and like basically let Hitler do whatever he wanted.
And all of that started
well, I don't know if people had their reservations from the beginning, but that was kind of what threw it into mainstream.
Well, because humanity just makes assumptions before actually knowing the truth, you know? They just assume things.
Yeah. Okay, so I did find that New York Times post, and it was on December 25th, 1941, so this was the second year of the war, and it said, according to someone who wrote an editorial in the New York Times, the voice of Pius XII is a lonely voice in the silence and darkness enveloping Europe this Christmas. He is about the only ruler left on the continent of Europe who dares to raise his voice at all.
Oh, wow.
Everyone acknowledged that he was speaking out against this.
Yeah.
And so it's like, dude, look back at the old articles, look back at the archives, you can see this. And so when Pope Francis opened up the archives a few years ago, back in 2020, everyone's like, the truth's finally going to be known, and it's like, but we already know what he was doing, you know?
Yeah.
And we saw more in depth about, they actually released in those Vatican archives, they found a list of names of people who were saved, of people who were being hidden because of the Pope's incentives. And Jews whose lives were saved.
That's amazing. That is so cool.
Yeah.
One man, huh?
So I just think it's really cool and really admirable to think about Pius XII and everything that he did. And of course, he wasn't like, you know, the sole ruler, global ruler, and he didn't really know what was going on with Hitler in the beginning. Sure, he was human. He might have made mistakes by signing that concordat, but he didn't know what was going on.
Well, and try to put yourself in their shoes. Like, he's just a normal mortal human being, and this gets thrown on top of him. He probably had no idea that this was going to happen to him while he was Pope, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, how do you handle this? It's like, like, there's no preparation in the seminary for how to handle something like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was just thrown on him last minute, so he's just doing his best.
Like, how do I handle a Satanist dictator? Like, that's not in, you know, seminary.
Trying to take over the world,
Exactly. Yeah, no. And honestly, we can't. It was also just the fact that one man did so much.
Yeah.
So we can't demand one man to basically do, like, to play God, you know? We can't demand that. And even then, one man rose up to the occasion and did a lot.
Yeah. And it makes me happy that he's venerable now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that was just a little quick rundown on some of that information regarding Pius XII. And we'll definitely post the articles and the links and everything in the description, because there's a lot.
And I'm sure there's a lot more like details that go into this, like depth.
There's a lot.
Secrets, betrayers, stuff like that. So
yeah, definitely. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed, and thank you, Nefer, for that.
Thank you. And please make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and check out the link tree in the description for more videos like this.
Yeah, we're praying for you. God bless you, and keep your fire burning.
Bye.